"Sir, please marry my mommy. She's all I've got left now," begged the tearful girl to the cold CEO. The words, tremulous and raw, cut through the evening air like a cry for help no one was prepared to answer. Ethan Blackwood, seated at the head of a polished table on the patio of one of Manhattan's most elite restaurants, froze mid-conversation. His fork hovered above a porcelain plate of seared filet mignon, untouched since the waiter placed it 10 minutes ago. The voice belonged to a little girl, no more than 4 years old, her dress tattered and stained, oversized like a hand-me-down from another lifetime. Her hair clung in wisps to her tear-streaked cheeks, and her fingers, tiny and trembling, clutched the sleeve of his navy Armani jacket. A hush fell over the table. Ethan's business associates, mid-task, lowered their glasses in confusion. Chairs creaked softly as heads turned toward the child now standing beside one of the wealthiest men in New York like she had every right to be there. Her brown eyes, wide with fear and hope, locked onto his with a vulnerability that struck deeper than any financial loss or boardroom betrayal ever had. Ethan blinked. "What did you say?" His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. The girl's bottom lip trembled. "Please marry my mommy. She's really sick. We don't have anyone else. And you look like a nice man." A flurry of movement stirred nearby as a woman, young but visibly worn, pale beneath the streetlight, her long blonde hair in disarray, hurried toward them, limping slightly. She wore a faded coat over a simple cotton dress, her breathing labored from running. "Lily," she gasped, her voice breathless. "Baby! No! You cannot just—" She scooped the girl into her arms, turning to face Ethan, and in the moment their eyes met, time seemed to fracture. "Isabel!" The name struck him before the recognition fully formed. Her face was thinner, paler, the spark in her eyes dimmed by years he had not seen. But it was her, Isabel Rowan, the girl he had known a decade ago, the one whose laughter once pulled him from the darkest corners of his mind, the one he had walked away from, without a word. For a beat too long, no one spoke. "I am so sorry," Isabel said, holding Lily close. Her voice cracked like an old violin string. She doesn't know what she's saying. Please just forget this." But Ethan couldn't. The sound of Isabel's voice wrapped around his memory like a melody he had forgotten he loved. The image of the child's face, so familiar now that he truly looked, hit him with a wave of something terrifying. The shape of her eyes, the arch of her brow. He stood slowly, napkin falling forgotten from his lap. "Isabel?" She froze. "You remember," she whispered. "Aye, how is this?" His voice faltered as the realization cemented. This was no coincidence. "Come on, Lily," Isabel said quickly, lowering her eyes and turning away. "We need to go." "No," Lily protested, her little hands reaching out toward Ethan again. "He's kind. I saw him smile. He can help you get better." The last part echoed more quietly, but Ethan heard it, and so did everyone else. He took a step forward, ignoring the stunned silence of his guests and the blinking confusion of the maitre d'. "Wait," he said. "Isabel, are you all right?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "We're fine. Please, let's not do this here." But Ethan saw the truth beneath her words. The tremble in her legs, the dark circles under her eyes, the frantic way she cradled the girl. He looked down at Lily once more. She gazed back up at him, hope flickering behind every tear. Do you want to come inside?" he asked carefully. "You both look like you need to sit, maybe eat something." Isabel stared at him, stunned. Behind them, a man in a suit cleared his throat and murmured to Ethan, "Shall I have security escort them?" "No," Ethan said firmly, never taking his eyes off Isabel. "They stay." The street hummed back to life around them, but within Ethan Blackwood's chest, something unfamiliar stirred. A pull he had long buried, a face he had never expected to see again, and a question, quiet, dangerous, undeniable, rose in his mind. Was this fate? It started with a painting. Ethan remembered the first time he saw her, back in his sophomore year of college, beneath the wide canopy of a sycamore tree. She was sketching, utterly absorbed, golden hair falling softly across her face, sunlight catching it like threads of silk. He had watched her from a distance, not daring to interrupt. It wasn't until their third accidental encounter and a poorly managed group project that he finally introduced himself. "Isabel," he whispered now, standing in the present but anchored to a past that never really let go. She had been everything he wasn't, vibrant, warm, unafraid. Where he withdrew into silence, she filled spaces with color. He was still grieving his father then, slipping further into depression and isolation. But Isabel, she had reached for him without judgment, without expectation. They met properly in a studio art class. He'd enrolled on impulse, hoping something, anything might pull him from the fog. One day, she glanced at his canvas and said gently, "You draw like someone who's afraid to be seen." Then she offered him a brush. That small gesture became everything. From there, they became inseparable. They shared late-night coffee and quiet talks under campus lamps. She introduced him to color theory. He carried her canvases across campus. He read poetry to her when she couldn't sleep, and she told him about her dream, to open a free art school for children, especially those who had nothing. Art, she said, had saved her after her parents divorced. She wanted to give that salvation to others. He admired her, loved her even, but he never told her. He couldn't. He was too ashamed of his panic attacks, his doubt, the weight of grief he hadn't yet processed. Isabel never demanded more. She stayed through the silence, through the fear, without asking him to change, until he left. When he received a scholarship for a graduate program abroad, he didn't tell her. He simply packed and left. No goodbye, no explanation. He told himself it was better that way, cleaner, mercy disguised as abandonment. He had convinced himself that walking away would spare her, that she would forget, that he would too, but memory didn't work like that. Even across oceans, she haunted him. He'd see a girl's laugh and think of her, hear wind in the trees and remember the way she used to hum while painting. He buried himself in ambition and silence, but she remained beneath it all, color, waiting to bloom again. Now, standing just feet from her once more, he saw what time had changed. Isabel looked older, tired, strong in a quiet, almost fragile way. She held a little girl against her hip, a child who shared the same warmth in her eyes, the same tilt of her head. She had stayed in New York. She had fought. She had become a mother, alone from the look of it. Ethan wondered what she had felt when he vanished. Had she waited for a letter, cried over his silence, moved on? His hands curled at his sides, the weight of every word unsaid pressing down on him. He could still hear her laughter, see the way she used to brush paint off her cheek, feel the touch of her fingers on his wrist when she found something funny. She was no ghost. She was real. Standing there, holding a child who had just begged a stranger to save her mother. That child. Something about the girl tugged at him deeper than memory. Her eyes, her smile, the shape of her face, the way Isabel hadn't corrected her when she called him kind, the way her voice trembled when she asked him to marry her mother. Could it be? He tried to push the thought away, but it clung to him, stubborn as hope. He had no right to wonder, not yet. But now he could no longer pretend Isabel was just a piece of the past. She was here, hurting, and maybe, just maybe, he still had time to make one thing right. It began with unease, a quiet gnawing in Ethan's chest that refused to go away after that night. Isabel had insisted they were fine, had tried to pull Lily away, but her eyes, sunken, tired, guarded, told another story. Ethan could not shake it. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. He made a single phone call, one that broke every boundary of personal and professional protocol. Within hours, he had her full name, address, and medical history placed on his desk. He told himself it was out of concern, that he was just trying to help. But the moment he saw the bold letters at the top of the file, congestive heart failure, degenerative valve disease, uninsured, his hands clenched into fists. She was dying, living alone with a child, taking odd jobs, skipping appointments. Her condition was worsening rapidly. A transplant was her only hope, but the waitlist was long and her eligibility unstable without consistent care or insurance. She had not even been to a cardiologist in 3 months. Ethan stood in the middle of his office, file trembling in his grip. The woman who had once been his entire universe was quietly fading out of hers, and she had said nothing. His next move was impulsive. He drove to the small apartment she shared with Lily, a narrow walk-up with peeling paint and rusted mailboxes. A neighbor let him in, assuming he was a caseworker. Inside, the space was clean but threadbare. Children's books lined a shelf. A cracked watercolor set sat near a half-finished canvas of a meadow. Then he saw it, a small notebook lying open on the coffee table. He should have looked away. He should have left. But he did not. The pages were filled with soft sketches, Lily's tiny hands, the curve of her cheek, the silhouette of a man standing in the distance. And words, pages of them, not for anyone, just poured out like a confession to no one. And there, halfway down one page, the sentence that broke him. She looks so much like him, the eyes, the way she frowns when she thinks too hard. But I never told him. I couldn't. He had already chosen his future. I chose mine. I chose her. Ethan sat down, the journal slipping from his hands, his world tilted. Lily, his daughter, his daughter. He had a child, he had a daughter. And he had not been there, had not even known. He had missed her first steps, her first words, every scraped knee and birthday candle. He had not held her when she was sick, had not kissed her goodnight. He had not been there. And Isabel, she had kept it to herself. Not out of malice, but out of quiet pride and deep pain. She had carried that weight alone because he had walked away, not just from her, but from the life they might have had. His throat closed. His chest ached, not from guilt alone, but from the sudden, overwhelming love that surged through him. For a little girl with 2 big eyes and a trembling voice. For the woman who had given everything to protect her. Tears filled his eyes. Not since his father's funeral had he cried like this. Not since the day he buried his ability to feel in exchange for ambition. But now, the dam broke, and in the silence of that small apartment, Ethan Blackwood wept. For the years lost, for the truth buried, for the 2 lives he had never meant to abandon, and for the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, it was not too late to return. Ethan found her just as the sun began to dip behind the city skyline, casting long shadows over the park near their old university. Isabel sat on a bench, Lily beside her, cradling a worn sketchbook in her lap. The same sketchbook she used in college, he realized. The cover now frayed, the corners bent, pages likely filled with years of stories told in color. He had rehearsed this moment over and over on the drive there, what to say, how to say it. But now, standing just feet away, he felt every word fail him. Isabel looked up as if sensing him before she saw him. Her expression did not shift, not anger, not surprise, just a quiet steel in her eyes that braced for whatever storm he brought. "I need to talk to you," he said softly. She glanced at Lily, who was engrossed in drawing something on the page, a house, maybe, or a son with arms. "Walk with me," she replied without looking up, rising slowly. They strolled in silence for a stretch, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Ethan exhaled. "I know," he said. Her step slowed. "Know what?" He met her eyes. "That Lily is mine." A pause, just a breath, and then she looked away. "I found your journal," he added gently. "I read what you wrote. I'm sorry. I had no right. But I know now." Isabel stopped walking. "You had no right," she agreed, her voice cool but calm. "But I figured you would find out eventually." He nodded, swallowing hard. I want to be there. For her. For both of you." She turned to face him, arms crossed against her chest. "Now? After all these years?" "I did not know," he said. "If I had—" "You would have what?" Her voice sharpened, eyes blazing. "Chosen differently? Stayed? Written? You were gone, Ethan. No phone call, no letter, just silence." "I was young," he said, ashamed, scared. "I thought I was doing the right thing, that walking away would hurt you less." "It didn't," she replied, her voice tight. "It just hurt differently." He stepped closer. "I cannot change the past, Isabel, but I can try to make it right now." She shook her head. "You think right is just showing up with good intentions and money?" Her laugh was short and bitter. "You left me to raise a child alone, scared and broke. I built our life one scraped knee and sleepless night at a time. And I did it without asking for anything." He looked down, ashamed. But she was not done. "Do you think I would have kept her from you out of spite?" she said. "I was terrified. Of being rejected. Of asking for help and getting pity instead. I chose to protect her. I chose to be her mother, fully, unconditionally. I want to be her father," he whispered. "You do not get to want that now," she snapped. "She is not a want. She is a person. A child. With a heart and dreams and memories that do not include you." His throat closed. "I'm not saying no," Isabel continued, voice gentler now. "But I am saying this. If you want to be part of her life, it is not just about love. It is about staying. Every scraped knee, every stomach flu, every birthday party, every art show. If you cannot promise you will be there through all of it, then do not start." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not walk back into her life unless you're ready to stay forever." Ethan stared at her, humbled, shaken to his core. This was not the girl he had left behind. This was a woman who had fought for every inch of stability, who had stood alone in the fire and come out with scars and strength he could barely comprehend, and God help him, he loved her more in that moment than he ever had before. "I am not walking away again," he said finally, his voice rough. "Not from her, not from you." Isabel searched his face for a long time, then gave a small nod, guarded, not yet trust, but something close. Then she turned and walked back toward the bench, toward their daughter, and Ethan stood beneath the lengthening shadows of the past, knowing that for the first time in his life, he was ready to choose something more than success. He was ready to choose them. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where the city seemed softer, the noise dimmed by the hush of weekend routines. Ethan had returned to the small park near Isabel's apartment, not to intrude but to watch from a respectful distance. He had been doing it often lately, checking in without being seen, as if afraid that stepping too close might shatter whatever fragile bridge he had begun to rebuild. That morning, he spotted Lily kneeling near a patch of bushes, holding something carefully in her arms. A scruffy gray cat, tail twitching, eyes half closed in trust. Lily spoke softly, running her fingers through its matted fur. Ethan edged closer, remaining behind the low hedge, just enough to hear. "It's okay, Mr. Ethan," she whispered. "Mommy says you were kind. Once, maybe you still are." Ethan's breath caught. "Mr. Ethan?" He stayed there, hidden, heart pounding, as Lily continued petting the cat. "She talks about you sometimes in her sleep. I know she misses you, even if she won't say it when she's awake." Ethan's chest tightened. The innocence of it, the trust, the truth that slipped from a child's lips more freely than from any adult's heart. Later that evening he made a decision. He would not force his way in, but he could still help, quietly, consistently. He began with small things. A week's worth of groceries appeared at their door, no note, no explanation. Isabel asked around, but the neighbors knew nothing. Then a prepaid envelope arrived at the clinic's billing office, marked anonymously, covering Isabel's overdue fees in full. She tried to return the money through the front desk, but there was no account to trace. She grew suspicious but never said anything to Lily. Meanwhile, Ethan made excuses to spend time at the park where Lily often played. He watched from afar, sometimes close enough for small exchanges. One afternoon, Lily struggled with a tiny, wobbly bicycle. Isabel was on the bench, pale and clearly exhausted. Ethan, passing by, saw the moment Lily fell, just a little tumble, but enough to scrape her knee and bring tears. Before Isabel could rise, Ethan was already beside the girl, crouching down with instinctive care. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked, offering his hand. Lily looked up, blinking through tears. Then she nodded and took his hand. "You want to try again?" he asked gently. "I can help. I used to be terrible at bikes too." She sniffled. "You did?" "The worst," he said, smiling. From the bench, Isabel watched in silence. She did not call Lily back. She did not interrupt. And so Ethan stayed. He held the seat steady. He held the seat steady as Lily pushed forward, wobbling, then balancing, then finally flying on her own. She turned back, laughing, and Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not just pride, not just joy, connection. By the time they returned to the bench, Isabel was watching with unreadable eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "She's amazing." "She is," he hesitated. "You look tired." "I am," she admitted, "but I manage." He wanted to say more, wanted to take away every burden, but he held back. Later that night, he left a new helmet and a bottle of pediatric vitamins on their doorstep, along with a note in childlike handwriting that read, "For the best little bike rider in town." He signed it simply, "A friend." Ethan had once believed love was about grand gestures, but now he understood. It lived in the quiet things. In a held hand, a scraped knee cleaned with care, a bag of groceries, a steady voice saying, "Try again." And though Isabel's words remained guarded, though her eyes still held caution, her silence toward his quiet presence had shifted. She let him help. And that, he knew, was the first step toward forgiveness. It happened without warning. One moment Isabel was walking home from her shift at the bakery, paper bag in hand, cheeks flushed from the summer heat, and the next, her vision tilted. The sidewalk spun. Her chest tightened. Then the world went dark. By the time the ambulance arrived, she had collapsed completely. Someone had found Lily's emergency contact information in her bag, an unregistered number scribbled in careful handwriting. Ethan Blackwood. The paramedics called it with hesitation, unsure if a man like that would even answer. He did, and 20 minutes later, Ethan was sprinting into the ER of St. Luke's Hospital, breathless and pale. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Isabel Rowan. She was brought in." The nurse at the desk hesitated. "Are you family?" "Yes," he said without blinking. "I'm the only one she has." They let him through. Isabel lay unconscious, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily, a pale contrast to her usually radiant face. The doctor pulled him aside with a grave look. "Her heart's failing faster than we anticipated. She needs emergency surgery. She's a candidate for a donor heart. We have a match available, but we need immediate consent and financial authorization." Ethan signed the papers before the doctor could finish the sentence. He paid the full amount up front, no questions asked. Lily arrived an hour later, escorted by a kind neighbor. She burst into tears when she saw her mother through the glass, clinging to Ethan without hesitation. "Is she going to die?" she asked, voice small and cracking. "No," Ethan said, kneeling to her level. "She's going to be okay, I promise. The doctors are going to help her." "But she needs someone to be there," Lily sniffled. "She gets scared when she's alone." Ethan lifted her into his arms. "She's not alone, sweetheart. Not anymore." The night stretched long and slow. Ethan sat beside Isabel's hospital bed for hours, his suit jacket folded over the chair, tie gone, sleeves rolled up. He never left the room unless it was to check on Lily, who curled up in the cot provided by the staff, holding tightly to a stuffed elephant Ethan had bought from the gift shop. He read to her from a book they found in the waiting area, some silly story about a bear who lost his hat and went on a wild adventure to find it. His voice was calm, steady, full of warmth he did not know he had. Eventually, Lily drifted off, her small hand resting against his. The nurses watched from the doorway, quietly whispering among themselves. "That's Ethan Blackwood," one said in awe. "The hedge fund guy. Yeah, that's him. Never thought I'd see the day. He looks like a dad." Word spread quickly through the wing. The CEO, who had always appeared untouchable, was now gently cradling a little girl's head in his lap and holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Hours passed. Isabel remained in surgery. Ethan did not sleep. At one point, Lily stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at him. Her voice was soft, drowsy. "Mr. Ethan?" she whispered. He brushed hair from her face. "I'm here." She reached out and placed her tiny hand on his. "Thank you for being here, Daddy Ethan," she murmured. "Mommy said you were her favorite dream." Ethan's breath caught. He looked down at the little girl, his daughter, and felt something inside him break wide open. He had missed so much, but he was here now, and he would never leave again. He kissed her forehead gently. "I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, in that sterile hospital room, filled with fluorescent light and the quiet hum of machines, Ethan Blackwood, CEO, businessman, billionaire, was no longer just those things. He was a father, and he knew that whatever happened next, he would spend the rest of his life making sure Lily and Isabel never had to dream of him again, because he would be real, present, the one holding their hands, always. The days that followed were a blur of waiting, prayers, and countless whispered promises. Ethan moved mountains behind closed doors. He made personal calls to every connection he had in the medical world, from hospital board members to the director of the National Transplant Registry. He reached out to a cardiac surgeon renowned for handling the most complex transplant cases and arranged for Isabel to be transferred to a top-tier facility under the quiet umbrella of a charitable foundation he had funded in secret years before, but never once used for personal reasons. This time, he did, without hesitation. When the donor match came through, he signed everything. He paced the sterile hallway during the surgery, heart in his throat, hands trembling in a way they never had in board meetings or billion-dollar negotiations. The procedure took hours, and then it was done. The surgeon emerged, peeling off his gloves with a tired smile. "She's strong." The transplant was a success. Ethan closed his eyes and exhaled, a quiet sob escaping his lips. 2 days later, Isabel opened her eyes. The light overhead was soft. Her body felt foreign, heavy but alive. For the first time in months, she could breathe deeply without pain. Color had returned to her cheeks, and warmth spread through her fingertips like sunrise breaking across her skin. Her gaze drifted to the figure slumped in a chair beside her bed, Ethan. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, his face unshaven, but he was there, head resting against her arm, holding her hand like a lifeline. "Ethan?" she croaked. He jerked awake, blinking fast, then smiled with a look she had never seen before, raw relief, unfiltered love. "You're okay," he breathed. She nodded, still groggy. "The surgery?" "Perfect," he said. "You're going to be okay." She looked at him, really looked, and saw everything, the weariness, the fear, the tears that had clearly been shed while she was unconscious, and she realized he had not left her side. Slowly, Ethan stood, still holding her hand. Then, without a word, he knelt, not in desperation, in devotion. "Isabel," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion, "you are the only person who's ever made me want to be more than what I was. You saw me when I was nothing, and you loved me enough to give me the greatest gift I have ever known, a daughter I never deserved but would die for now." Tears welled in her eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple ring. No diamonds, no extravagance, just a thin band of gold. "I left once," he said, "because I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. I know who I am, and I know what I want. I want you. I want our daughter. I want every birthday, every hospital visit, every night of burnt toast and crayon drawings. I want a life with you." He looked up, his hand trembling slightly. "Please, let me choose you this time. Let me love you. Forever." Isabel could barely speak. Her chest swelled, not from pain, but from something infinitely greater. Her heart, her new heart, beat stronger than ever. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." And just like that, Lily burst through the door, having slipped past the nurses, her little legs racing to the bedside. "Are you okay, Mommy?" she asked, breathless. Isabel opened her arms and Lily climbed in. Then Lily looked at Ethan and grinned. "I knew you were her happy ending," she said proudly, snuggling between them. Ethan kissed her forehead. "No," he said softly. "She's mine." The garden was nothing grand, just a small patch of earth behind Isabel's favorite community art center, surrounded by climbing roses and ivy-covered trellises. But under the golden glow of late afternoon sun, it looked like a scene out of a storybook. Chairs were lined neatly in 2 rows, white linen fluttering gently in the breeze. Wildflowers dotted the aisle, hand-picked by Lily and arranged in colorful bunches inside jam jars. There was no orchestra, no chandelier, no marble pillars, only soft laughter, teary smiles, and a feeling of something sacred in the air. Isabel stood beneath a wooden arch, wrapped in white ribbon, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, now healthy and full of life. The pale skin that once betrayed her illness now glowed with a natural blush. Her eyes sparkled as she adjusted the delicate lace on her simple cream-colored gown. She had never looked more radiant. Ethan stood across from her, dressed not in a tuxedo, but in a soft gray suit that brought out the depth in his eyes. No tie, just a boutonniere of white lilies. Lily's idea, of course. He looked at Isabel like a man who had found the center of his world and had no intention of ever letting it slip away again. And between them stood Lily, barefoot in a flower girl dress that twirled when she spun, holding a small basket of petals she had scattered with wild delight on the walk down the aisle. Her cheeks were rosy, her grin wider than the sky. The ceremony was short, intimate. Every word spoken was rooted in truth, in pain overcome and love reclaimed. The vows were handwritten. Ethan's voice shook slightly as he read his. "You were always the light, Isabel. Even when I chose darkness, you taught me what love looks like when it stays. And now I promise to stay, to protect, to build a life with you and Lily that honors every moment we almost lost." Isabel's voice was soft but steady as she responded. "You gave me a second chance, at life, at love, at family. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, always." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lily clapped the loudest, then leapt into their arms before they could even kiss. The crowd erupted in laughter. The reception was held in the same garden, under strings of lights Ethan had helped hang the night before. There was no catering service, just homemade dishes from Isabel's friends, fresh lemonade, and a small 2-tier cake decorated with painted frosting lilies, courtesy of Lily's eager fingers. During the toast, Ethan knelt beside Lily at their table. The music had faded, replaced by the soft hum of conversation and birdsong. He took her small hand in his. "You know something, sweetheart," he said quietly. "You're the reason I came back. You're the reason I found Mommy again." Lily beamed. "Because I asked you to marry her?" Ethan chuckled. "Then because you reminded me who I used to be, who I want to be. You're brave, just like her. And now we're a family." Lily looked down, as if weighing his words. Then she smiled again, this time with a sweetness far beyond her years. "Thank you for choosing Mommy again." Ethan paused, then leaned closer, brushing a kiss to her temple. "No," he said, "Mommy chose me, and now I'll never let her go." At that moment, Isabel joined them, wrapping her arms around both. The 3 of them stood together, no longer broken pieces trying to fit, but whole, complete. and as the stars blinked to life above, their little family danced under the lights. Isabel's laughter like wind chimes, Lily spinning in circles, and Ethan watching them both like the luckiest man in the world. Love, once lost, had returned, and this time it would never leave. And so, in a quiet garden filled with laughter, wildflowers, and second chances, love found its way home. A man who once walked away finally chose to stay. A woman who carried everything on her own finally let herself be held. And a little girl who believed in fairy tales helped turn heartbreak into a happily ever after. Sometimes, it takes the innocence of a child to remind us what really matters. Not wealth, not power, but love, presence, and the courage to say, "This time, I'm staying." If this story touched your heart, we invite you to be part of more journeys like this. Real stories, imagined with care, meant to heal, to inspire, and to stir your soul. Subscribe now to Soul Stirring Stories, where every tale reminds us that love is never too late and that hope is always worth holding on to. Until next time, keep believing in the magic of compassion.